even before they made their moves, I knew this was going to be a team bringing in Mike Vrabel with a guy like Drake May, who showed so much promise and potential last season. I think he can be their version of Josh Allen. We're back with Football Forecast Offseason Edition, Episode 4. We have a lot to get into. He's Kaynen Buckshot. I'm Anthony Balester. And like I said, we got a lot to get into. Make sure to subscribe to the Empty the Bench on YouTube. And make sure to be following us across all social medias. Make sure to be following us on TFB Forecast ETB. Also be making sure to follow our YouTube channel at youtube.com/ETB. For all of our other shows. If you like UFC, you're going to love our shows. If you love baseball, we got shows for that as well. So any sport you like, definitely make sure to look at our YouTube channel. We're really getting close to the 1,000 subscriber mark. So any help will definitely go a great deal. So make sure to subscribe. Get us to that 1,000 mark. It would be greatly appreciated. Also make sure to be following our ETB Substack at ETB Substack. Our etbnetwork.substack.com. We have a lot of new things that we're interested in every week. We're doing unnecessary wagers. So if you're a person that likes to bet and place wagers on things, we got every sport covered: college basketball, football, whatever you would like. Definitely make sure to be listening to the Football Forecast. However, you listen to your podcast, whether you listen to on your AirPods on the go, or if you watch it on your TV on your YouTube channel. Definitely make sure to be following and listen to us however you like to be listening to us. Also, the Football Forecast is presented by Playback. There's going to be more in the show on that, so definitely stay tuned. But like I said, Kaynen, we have a lot to get into. This was the first week of NFL free agency, and there was so much that happened. We had the Sam Darnold news. We had the Geno Smith trade, the DK Metcalf trade, 49ers and the Patriots making some moves. So it was a very interesting week. How are you doing, Kaynen?
Yeah, I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing very good. Like I said, this is probably the best time of the year. There's more player movement in the NFL than ever before. So it's a great time to be an NFL fan.
Yeah, it's been a crazy week.
With what was the biggest news? And it was the Seattle Seahawks signing Sam Darnold and trading Geno Smith to the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, obviously, Geno Smith was traded to the Raiders before the Sam Darnold trading, and they made another trade, trading away the receiver, which is a topic that we'll speak about later in the show. But, Kaynen, when they traded Geno Smith and their top wide receiver, it seemed like Seattle was maybe going on a youth movement and maybe going into a rebuild. And then they went out and signed Sam Darnold, and seems like they're gonna try to compete now. What were your thoughts about that, Kaynen?
Yeah, I thought that was kind of crazy as well. I get the whole going for the youth movement thing. That was my initial thoughts. But like you said, they're going for it now. Darnold had a crazy year as a Viking, pushed them to the playoffs. He was looking good right until the end. But I think at the end there was a toss-up whether do we keep Darnold, do we move on? And his performance kind of made up everyone's minds. It'll be interesting to see if he could kind of replicate what he did with the Vikings at Seattle. Kind of prove the Vikings wrong, make them regret their decision. But he'll have to do a lot more with a lot less, and that'll be the true challenge. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting. When they traded Geno, we knew something big was going to happen. What do you think, Anthony?
Yeah, I was definitely surprised because, like I said, I thought they were going to kind of go into a rebuild and maybe draft their quarterback either this year or in 2026. But Sam Darnold, I think, is definitely an upgrade over Geno Smith. Yeah, Geno Smith got this team to the playoffs a couple of years ago, and I think he even got this team to 9 or 10 wins just this past season. So he definitely had his moments, and he's even an upgrade for what the Las Vegas Raiders had with Aiden O'Connell or Gardner Minshew. But that really isn't saying much because anything's an upgrade over those guys. But yes, the Seattle Seahawks definitely upgraded their quarterback position. And yes, he doesn't have Justin Jefferson, who's one of the first or second best receiver in football, or a guy like Jordan Addison. But he does have decent running backs with Kenneth Walker, Zach Charbonnet, and I do like Jackson Smith and Jigba. I think he's a perfect safety blanket. He's a guy who could play in the slot and on the outside. And honestly, Kaynen, I think he kind of became the Seattle Seahawks best receiver late in the season. So I think with those guys, I think Sam Darnold can have success, and they do have some good pieces on defense. But you are right, Kaynen. More is going to be asked for him. The Vikings had so many great players around Sam Darnold, so he's definitely got a much better situation than what he had with the Jets, but definitely not nearly as good as the Vikings. And we also got to remember, too, the Vikings have an offensive coach in O'Connell. And O'Connell does really good with quarterbacks and can scheme up really well and put his quarterbacks in positions to succeed. So, now he's going to go to a defensive coach. So, we're going to really see, how much he could take from, playing under a guy like O'Connell. And while he was also in San Francisco with a guy like Kyle Shanahan, let's see if he could take that over to Seattle. But Sam Darnold proved that he can be a great quarterback. So I'm interested to see if he's able to continue that success in Seattle. With Geno Smith, Kaynen, he's going to reunite with Pete Carroll, and they also re-signed Max Crosby, and a team that we thought, was definitely, years away from competing. We thought they were going to trade away Max Crosby and maybe, decide to tank for a year. Well, now with Pete Carroll coming in, re-signing Max Crosby and training Geno Smith, who honestly Pete Carroll got the most out of him, it seems like they're going to try to compete now. What are your thoughts and how good do you think Geno Smith could be with the Raiders, Kaynen?
Yeah, so I think like with what you said, you're not trading away Crosby, you're paying him all this money. You needed someone that could run an offense and, take advantage of the defensive possessions they have, because we know a guy like Crosby will create turnover on downs, just get to the quarterback. So I think Geno Smith can do good. They have some good tight ends, some big targets he could throw to. So I think we'd see some production out of him and maybe a little bit better season out of the Raiders this year.
Yeah, I definitely think they got to get some wide receiver and running back help and maybe some line. I mean, this is a team that pretty much needs help at every position. One position they definitely don't need help in is tight end with Brock Bowers, who as a rookie may have been the best tight end in football. And now that he gets a guy like Geno Smith, it's going to be nice to see, maybe him even have even better stats, even though he does broke every single rookie stat out there for a rookie tight end. But it's going to be interesting to see. This team has two great players, one on both sides of the ball in Max Crosby and in Brock Bowers. And now bring in Geno Smith and Pete Carroll. If they have a good draft, they got a decently high draft pick. So if they can have a good draft, this team definitely could put themselves in a position to compete and maybe win more games than what they did last year. But man, that division is getting so tough. And Kansas City, a couple of years ago had a lot of easy matchups in that division. And now with the Broncos getting better, the Chargers getting better, and the Raiders at least trying to attempt to compete, there's definitely not going to be any, easy wins in the AFC West. But there was another trade with the Seattle Seahawks, and I don't want to say his name too soon, but the Seattle Seahawks traded DK Metcalf to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, there was rumors, we talked about this before, Kaynen, about DK Metcalf wanted to be traded because he wanted a new contract, and he wanted to be paid in the $30 million. And Seattle at this point wasn't going to pay it. And honestly, I think they wanted to go with Jackson Smith the Jigba as the younger receiver on a rookie contract. So we knew DK Metcalf was going to be traded. We just didn't know what team. Well, Pittsburgh Steelers stepped up, and I think they gave up a second-round draft pick for him, and they gave him a huge contract. They gave him his $30 million a year, but they also gave him a 5-year deal, which equals out to $150 million. Now, that's a lot for a receiver, but it goes to show you the Steelers are trying to build up their offense, which has kind of been their Achilles heel the last few years. A team that's been built by defense, and their offense has been coming up short, and that's why they keep losing the first round of the playoffs. So this will definitely help, and putting him on one side of George Pickens, I think he'll take the pressure off of George Pickens, and I think we're going to see the best out of Pickens, and now he'll get the single coverage, and I think he's going to flourish. But what were your thoughts on DK Metcalf going to the Steelers, Kaynen?
Yeah, I think if they could get like a competent quarterback, this automatically makes Pittsburgh like one of the most dangerous passing teams in the NFL. I mean, you have Metcalf on one side and Pickens on the other. That's just absolutely crazy. That's a lot of field that needs to be covered, especially when you have a guy like Freiermuth at tight end as well. He's been really consistent for them. So they're just adding more pieces to an offense, which they needed to add to. So this team's only getting deadlier. The one thing that kind of makes me upset about this is how awesome the run game would have been with Najee Harris back there. You have two really physical receivers on the outside. They don't shy away from contact at all. They invite it. So that would be awesome if they could get another running back in there to fill up Najee's spot, and they could be really dominant on the outside run game.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought the run game up, Kaynen. Yeah, that was definitely a huge loss. And losing Najee Harris, who I believe is going to the Los Angeles Chargers to play with Jim Harbaugh, that was a tough loss. I mean, a lot of people, disrespect Najee Harris, and you can say what you want about him. But one thing about him is he's always consistent and he always plays. The guy's never hurt. He practically plays every single game. And, he's consistently always around that 1,000-yard mark. So he's never going to be a guy that rushed for 2,000 yards, but he's always going to consistently get you that 60 to 70 hard yardage every single game. And I think that's a perfect compliment for the Chargers, but that's a huge loss for the Steelers. Now, I know they still got Jaylen Warren, who, obviously kind of, played him a lot. That's the reason why Najee Harris didn't have the stats, because they used Jaylen Warren a lot. They kind of had a running back by committee almost between those two guys, and Jaylen Warren had his moments, and there's some Steelers fans out there who like Warren better than Najee Harris. Now, I don't. I think Najee Harris was definitely the better running back, but Jaylen Warren can contribute. They did try to bring in Kenneth Gainwell. They kind of, regard that, make up for that loss of Najee Harris. But obviously, Kenneth Gainwell was no Najee Harris. So I think Steelers could definitely look at drafting a young running back. It's a great running back class for it. So they definitely need a young running back in that stable. But you said, Kaynen, this team is a quarterback away. And, I'm really glad that you brought that up, because there's a certain quarterback who might go there. And that's the great Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers right now is projected to maybe go to either the Pittsburgh Steelers or the New York Giants. Those are the two teams right now that they're talking about as being potentially interested in Aaron Rodgers. And it seems like it's going to be Aaron Rodgers' choice. Both teams would sign him if Aaron Rodgers wants to go there. So he basically has his pick, and he kind of got pros and cons of each. Obviously, if you go to the New York Giants, he doesn't have to move. He gets to stay in New York City. He gets to play in the same stadium that he was just playing with with the New York Jets. Obviously, they got Malik Neighbors, a good young receiver. They got a good young running back in Tracy. They're trying to build up their defense, so they got some good young pieces there. But I think this is a no-brainer, Kaynen. I think if you have the choice, it's got to be the Pittsburgh Steelers for all the reasons that we just said a couple minutes ago. I mean, you got George Pickens, DK Metcalf. Mike Tomlin with T.J. Watt leading that defense, and Cam Hayward. Their defense is always going to be solid. You put Aaron Rodgers on that team, they got a young and improving offensive line. You draft maybe another running back and bring in Rodgers. Rodgers obviously, can be a head case and be a cancer in the locker room. I think Mike Tomlin could do his best to negate that. And I think if he goes to Pittsburgh, they can finally get past the first-round playoffs and be a second-round playoff team. So I think this is a no-brainer. But what are your thoughts, Kaynen, and where do you think Rodgers should end up?
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. I think Rodgers should go to the Steelers. I mean, with the addition of DK and losing Najee Harris, I think the Steelers really need to ball out on a quarterback. They need someone that could throw a ball like Aaron Rodgers. And why not? I don't buy into the hype. He's washed or whatever. I think he's got a lot of good football left. And I think, Giants or the Steelers, if you put him on any team that's not the Jets, I think he's going to make an impact. So with the duo of Metcalf and Pickens there, I think that's just a perfect spot for him. He could throw deep balls down the field. And every ball, if those Metcalf and Pickens have one-on-one coverage, it's a 50-50 ball. They're just going to go up and grab it from their hands. So I think that would be an awesome spot for him.
Yeah, I mean, Aaron Rodgers usually flourishes with guys who are really good 50-50 ball catchers. I mean, look at what he did with a guy like Devontae Adams, and now he'll have two guys like that. Definitely, a perfect place for him. But what a lot of people are complaining about, definitely, maybe, Jets fans, but just in general, overall football fans, they think Aaron Rodgers is washed, and they don't think Aaron Rodgers is a good quarterback anymore. Now, I don't think he's prime Green Bay Packer Aaron Rodgers, where he's going to win you 4 MVPs and throw 40, 50 touchdowns and have only 5 turnovers. He's not that guy anymore, being in his early 40s, coming off a torn Achilles. But he's definitely far from washed. I mean, this guy is still better than more than half of the quarterbacks in the National Football League. I mean, you're talking about a guy who threw 28 touchdowns behind a terrible offensive line and a dysfunctional organization in the age of 40, coming off of a torn Achilles. I mean, how much more can you ask from him? And I know, he's not a guy that's going to uplift the players and be a leader in the locker room. but I don't think he has to be that in Pittsburgh. They already have their culture set. I think Rodgers, that's why he flourished with the Packers, because the Packers is a team and a franchise where the culture is already set. Where the Jets, they're looking to establish a culture, and they're looking for someone to be the savior. Rodgers needs to go somewhere where he could supplement what is already a good team and can kind of just do his job and kind of basically just go off and do what everybody else wants to do, whether it's at the Pat McAfee show or if that's his psychedelic trips. But all he's got to do is do his job in Pittsburgh. So I think that makes a lot of sense. But what are your thoughts, Kaynen, on people saying Aaron Rodgers is washed? Do you think he can still play good football?
Oh, yeah. I think not even good football. I think he can lead a team to win, especially when you have a team like the Steelers who have most of the pieces set. And, yeah, I think that's a big draw on him is his locker room leadership and his off-the-field antics. I think what you said was perfect. The Steelers already have a culture set with the team, and I'm sure other guys there are already leaders. You don't really need you don't really need Rodgers to go in there and be the leader. You already have people do it for him. So I think if he could go in there and just do what he does, that would be more than enough.
Yeah, and my last question for you, Kaynen, before we move on is with Rodgers on the Steelers, with the addition already with DK Metcalf, and if they have another good draft, how far do you think an Aaron Rodgers-led Pittsburgh Steelers team could go in the playoffs? I mean, in my opinion, I think they could definitely get past the first round, which is something Pittsburgh has been trying to do for multiple years now. I think they're definitely a second-round playoff team. I'm not sure if they get past the second round. I don't think they could beat a team like the Ravens, the Chiefs, or even like the Bengals or the Bills. But I think this team can possibly go as far as the second round of the playoffs. How far do you think that Rodgers could take this team in the playoffs, Kaynen?
With the run that the Steelers have had, it's hard to put them past the first round. But I think, yeah, with Rodgers there, that's more than enough. I think they could get it done. They've been on the line for so long. They just need that little push that Rodgers could give them. I think second round is accurate for them.
Yeah, and I know people want to have the fairy tale ending and go out and win the Super Bowl. Well, losing in the second round is sure of a hell of a lot better for Aaron Rodgers to go out than winning whatever it was 5-6 games for the Jets last year. But speaking of the Jets and speaking of Aaron Rodgers' friend and teammate, a guy like Davante Adams decided he's not going to follow Aaron Rodgers and go to whatever team he goes to. He's going to go back to the West Coast where he wanted to go, where he played in college, and he's going to sign with the Los Angeles Rams. And the Los Angeles Rams also decided that they're going to cut Cooper Kupp. What's funny about this is, Nick Morganson said this on the ETB show is, the Rams said they want to get younger at receiver, and technically they got older because Adams is older than Cooper Kupp. Now, if you look at the age-wise, yes, they did get older at receiver, but if you look at physicality and where these guys are physically as a player, Adams is a much younger football player and has a lot more left in the tank. I think Davante Adams at this point of his career is still a number one receiver that can get you over 1,100 yards. I think Cooper Kupp right now is better suited as a solid number two receiver. He's had a lot of injuries and he's had a lot of usage. And he came into the league at an older age, I think at like 23, 24 years old. And I just think the injuries has piled up, and he showed that he's not going to be a guy who's going to have longevity. Where Davante Adams seems like he has a lot of good football left. So, yeah, they may have got older age-wise, but I think they got a receiver who's in a much better place right now. And now Cooper Kupp's going to have to find a new home. And I think the Rams having Puka Nacua with Davante Adams, that's going to be one of the best duos in the NFL. And I think for probably maybe the first time in his career, Davante Adams would be the second best receiver on his own team. But what are your thoughts about the Rams signing Davante Adams and cutting Cooper Kupp, Kaynen?
Yeah, I think cutting Kupp was the right choice. I mean, he's been awesome for them, but coming off injuries and looking into their future, I think Adams is the right move as well. I think, like you said, he has a lot more left in the tank. And for a team that made such a good playoff push and they are young all around, I think having a tremendous route runner like Adams who can just get open, you don't have to throw a risky ball. Stafford's right there. He'll just chuck it to him. I think that's awesome for the team, especially for Puka Nacua, who that'll take a lot of pressure off him to get open and having to rely on him when you've got a guy like Davante you can just throw to. So I think that's going to just create a lot of plays all around and make the team better overall. I really liked that one. And that being said, I think Cooper Kupp can go and make a good spot for himself on the team somewhere else. I don't think he's truly out of the game yet either. I think teams with wide receiver needs, I think Cooper Kupp's a good pickup for them.
Oh yeah, I definitely think he can still contribute, and I definitely think he's got a couple years left as a contributing wide receiver. I just think where Adams is, I think Adams is probably a better receiver at this point. And I also heard Devontae Adams has always wore the number 17. Well, Puka Nacua wears 17, so I heard that Puka Nacua might be changing his number to 12. So I wonder if Devontae Adams threw him some money in there and said, I'll give you a couple million of my contract if you let me, have my numbers. So I hope they do the fans right. Anybody who had a Puka Nacua jersey, I hope they give them a free jersey exchange because that would suck for the fans who Puka Nacua, this new star that came in over the last 2 years. He's probably got the number one selling jersey in Los Angeles, and all these people got to go out and basically throw that jersey away for nothing after spending hundreds of dollars and gotta go buy a new jersey. I hope that the fans are done right by the team and can exchange their jerseys. The Football Forecast is presented by Playback. Watching sports is fun, but it's more fun with others. We spend way too much time watching it alone. Playback is a virtual space where communities can stream live sports together with everyone perfectly synced up. Creators can hop on stage, deliver their own play-by-play analysis and commentary, and invite viewers up for Q&A. Playback makes watching sports fully interactive and a social experience. From playing fantasy sports, from repping your favorite players and teams, and watching with the commentators and communities you care about. Win or lose, sports are best enjoyed together. Join our community by going to playback.tv/ETB network to find out more, including our live stream schedule. Now back to the show. Speaking of Cooper Kupp and him being able to sign with a team and make an impact, there's a team who's been pretty busy in free agency this year, and I think he'd be a perfect fit for them, and that is the New England Patriots. The New England Patriots have been pretty busy this offseason, and I mean, honestly, Kaynen, that's really no surprise. I mean, we knew that they had a crap load of money. They kind of basically went into a complete rebuild, went all young, got rid of all their older players, and now they have all this free agency money to spend. And they definitely spent it. And I think they made some really good impact on players. Mike Vrabel is a guy who's going to have his team playing good defensively. He's going to have them button up. And the Patriots really struggled on defense last year. So they brought in some really dominating defensive players. They brought in Milton Williams, who was one of the top guys on the market. This guy was probably the second best defensive tackle on the Eagles behind All-Pro Jalen Carter. And Milton Williams played basically almost at an All-Pro level. He was voted one of the top 100 players in the National Football League last season from Pro Football Focus. I mean, the guy's only like 27, 28 years old, and the guy's so disruptive for interior defensive linemen. The guy gets so many quarterback pressures, and I mean, that's exactly what the Patriots need is a guy in the middle who would destroy a guard in the center. So they brought him in to help with the interior defensive line. They also brought in Pro Bowl level linebacker Robert Spillane, who played on the Las Vegas Raiders, so a lot of people didn't really know about him, but he made a huge impact, and he's going to come in and kind of revamp the linebacking core. They also got Harold Landry, who was cut from the Tennessee Titans, and yeah, he's not an all-pro or a guy that can get you 15 sacks, but he's consistently playing 15 to 17 games every year, and he's consistently getting you 9 to 10 sacks. I mean, and if you could ever bring in a guy who's going to get you 9 to 10 sacks every single year, I mean, that's a great combo, and he gets to pair back up with Mike Vrabel, who coached him in Tennessee. They also helped their cornerback group get in Carlton Davis. You already got All-Pro Christian Gonzalez, who's one of the best corners in football, and now you get Carlton Davis, who's going to play opposite side of him as a number 2. That gives this team a great cornerback duo. And then they also revamped the offensive tackle position, bringing in Morgan Moses. Morgan Moses is going to really help the offensive line and really help protect Drake Maye. I think one thing that could also help Drake Maye is that they bring in Cooper Kupp, who could be, kind of his number 1 receiver this year and kind of be a safety blanket for him. But what are your thoughts, Kaynen, on all these moves that the Patriots have been making?
Yeah, I mean, I like the Williams addition. Like you said, Vrabel, he's going to build a very defensively sound team. The Carlton Davis, that's probably my favorite pickup that the Patriots got there. That was such a good pickup. But they had a lot to improve on, and I think they filled a lot of spots. And with Milton Williams, I mean, what a perfect guy. He clogs up the middle like no other. He's not going to get you to like 15 sacks, like you said, a season, but he does get to the quarterback and causes pressure, and that's who they needed up the middle because if you can't stop the run game, you lose control of the game. So it was important for them to get that. And yeah, I just can't get over the Carlton Davis. That was a good pickup.
Yeah, they definitely revamped their offense, and I mean, everybody's memory of Milton Williams was Milton Williams destroying the Chiefs' offensive interior line and getting to Patrick Mahomes, and now he's going to be playing for the New England Patriots, and now he's going to be trying to do the same thing to my Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills. So definitely scary times for the rest of the AFC East. One last thing I'll say, Kaynen, is I think the Patriots, are definitely improving. And even before they made their moves, I knew this was going to be a team bringing in Mike Vrabel with a guy like Drake May who showed so much promise and potential last season. I think he can be their version of Josh Allen. I mean, they got a lot of similarities. They're both big gunslinging quarterbacks that are mobile. He's just got to do the same thing Josh Allen did and just continue to progress in his accuracy, continue to learn the offense, and continue to read defenses. And if he continues to prove that, he can be the next Josh Allen. And I've been saying it for the last 4 to 6 months, Keenan. My prediction is I think the New England Patriots are going to be one of the most improved teams next season. And I think they're going to be better than the New York Jets. And I think they're going to be better than the Miami Dolphins and be the second best team in the AFC East behind the Buffalo Bills next season. Right now, Keenan, where do you see them in the AFC East next year? Do you think they can be the second best team and be better than the Dolphins and the Jets?
Yeah, I do think they could do that, but I don't know about him being the next Josh Allen. That's kind of crazy. I think we saw flashes of Drake May proving himself to be a starting quarterback, and he could produce some stats and get the ball down the field. But as far as doing what Josh Allen's doing and leading the team like him through the playoffs, I don't know about that. But yeah, being second in the division, I could definitely see that with all the guys they picked up. You have Vrabel there. They definitely have the pieces to succeed, but it's just a matter of can they put them together and execute.
Yeah, that's definitely true, Keenan. And yeah, I mean, it's not fair to compare anybody to Josh Allen because there's only one Josh Allen, and thankfully, he's in Buffalo and no one else. But a team that will be competing with the New England Patriots to be potentially the second best team because I don't want to jinx it, but we already know Josh Allen's got the first spot in the AFC locked up. But the team that's going to be competing for the second spot with the Patriots is the New York Jets. And the New York Jets are trying to get their own Drake May and Justin Fields. Now, we know Justin Fields is a guy who's had the talent, but, I mean, the guy's been in the league for multiple years now, and, I mean, he hasn't been able to get the talent out of him. And, I mean, he's had multiple stops, and, I mean, each place that didn't work out. I mean, he went to the Steelers, and, I mean, did okay, but, I mean, he basically had no choice midseason but to play Russell Wilson, and Russell Wilson's still a decent quarterback, but if your quarterback situation is put in a position where you have to play Russell Wilson, you probably are in a desperate need of a quarterback. So the New York Jets, I mean, the way that this makes sense to me is, I mean, I feel like they really didn't have any other options. I feel like this was probably their best choice out of all the guys that were out there to potentially get. They did pay a lot of money. I think they overpaid for him. $30 million guaranteed for a guy who may not even be on the team in 2026 is a hell of a lot of money. So I definitely think they overpaid for him. But the Jets, their main weakness last year was their offensive line. They could not protect Aaron Rodgers at all. So what makes most sense is, you have a guy like Aaron Rodgers who was old, coming off a torn Achilles, who had no mobility. So you go out and get a guy like Justin Fields, who may be the second or third most athletic quarterback in football. And I mean, we saw what he did his first couple of years with the Bears running. And I think pairing him back up with his college teammate with Garrett Wilson, I think he kind of make up for that really bad, poor offensive line that the New York Jets have. But what are your thoughts about this, Kaynen?
Yeah, it is, but it was kind of interesting for them to pick up Fields and pay him that much money. But I kind of like Fields. I think what he lacks up for passing, he makes up with his mobility, and he's just a great runner. He can dice up defense better than anyone at the quarterback position. So it'll be interesting to see if the Jets will like bring out the talent. Like you said, will bring out the talent that we know he has, and it truly will be a test because we're going to see if he could sink or swim. regardless if he's ready for a starting position, which he really hasn't proven he's ready for. The Jets needed someone, and he stepped up. And that's kind of a lot to ask of after a disastrous season they had last year. I bet the expectations are going to be high. So I hope he could do something, and I really think he could maybe play some exciting football, if nothing else.
Yeah, and I think I'm not sure if this completely takes them out of drafting a quarterback, but where they're positioned in the draft, it was going to be hard for them to draft a quarterback. I mean, you're probably not going to get Cam Ward unless if you trade up 2 number 1 picks, and I'm not sure if the Jets want to do that. It would make sense. And I know Shedeur Sanders has been talking about dropping in the draft, so maybe Shedeur Sanders could drop all the way to the New York Jets pick. But it seems like I think what might happen is they might just let Justin Fields ride it out for the year. And I mean, hey, if Justin Fields does really bad and you're one of the worst teams in the league next year's quarterback class is supposedly supposed to be a lot better than this year. So it would suck that you basically just threw away $30 million for nothing. But hey, I mean, if Justin Fields plays bad enough to get you a great quarterback next year, I guess that works out. And if he plays good enough to at least get you competitive, I think that works out too. But they definitely overpaid for him, Kaynen. And ultimately, I think the Jets are going to be in the same position they are a year from now, and they're probably going to be thinking, damn, we're going to have no choice but to draft a quarterback in 2026. But we have 2 teams who have been talked about drafting quarterbacks this year. But not only are they talking about drafting quarterbacks this year, they're interested in bringing in another veteran quarterback, and that's the Browns and the Giants. The Browns and the Giants have both showed some interest in Russell Wilson. Now, it seems like the Giants obviously would want Aaron Rodgers, but they can't get Aaron Rodgers. Russell Wilson seems to be their backup plan. And the Cleveland Browns, on the other hand, did trade for Kenny Pickett. And I know Russell Wilson went there for a meeting today, but he left with no deal. And the rumors are that Kenny Pickett's going to get a good chance to compete for the starting job because, Watson will be out for the year with a torn Achilles. So it looks like Kenny Pickett's going to be the starting quarterback down in Cleveland next season, unless they bring in a rookie quarterback. But it doesn't seem like with Russell Wilson leaving him without a deal. Doesn't seem like the Cleveland Browns may be all that interested in Russell Wilson after all. And if Aaron Rodgers does decide to go to Pittsburgh, maybe he has no choice but to end up in the Giants. But what are your thoughts on these 2 teams potentially being interested in Wilson, Kaynen?
Yeah, this is tough because both these teams need a quarter. Like they have such an urgent need for a quarterback, but I'm really not sold on Russell Wilson being a solution to any quarterback needs. His past couple seasons haven't been good. He's been put in different positions and had different expectations. But I think the team that he would impact the most, like would benefit the most going to, I think it would be the Giants. But I don't know. I don't think that's a good deal for the Giants because they're tying up that quarterback position and they're going to have to pay him. So it's kind of tough coming from the Daniel Jones situation where you've banked so much on the quarterback and you tried and tried again. Like, when are you ever going to rebuild if you keep on tying up that position? So it's tough. It's really tough.
Yeah, I think, if the Giants do bring in Russell Wilson, I mean, what would make sense is if they did draft a quarterback like Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders, you don't have to rush him into the starting job, man. You could kind of let, Russell Wilson be that bridge quarterback. And I mean, even if you really wanted to redshirt your quarterback, you could have Russell Wilson as the starter, Tommy DeVito as the backup, and then Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders as the third string. And then you could kind of bring that quarterback along slowly and don't have to rush him in too soon. But I bet you Russell Wilson is praying that Aaron Rodgers doesn't sign with the Giants, because if Aaron Rodgers decides to stay in New York and go with the Giants, and with the Browns potentially just being okay with going with Kenny Pickett and whatever rookie they draft, Russell Wilson may be on the outside looking in. And if he can't sign with the Giants, I'm not sure he's going to have a spot in the NFL this season. And he might be in a situation like we see with a lot of quarterbacks where they remain unsigned, and then we have to wait for a quarterback to get hurt. And then that's the team he probably goes to. So it's going to be interesting to see. But, with Russell Wilson getting older up in age, each year his options are becoming less and less. And, I mean, he's a Hall of Fame quarterback, but unfortunately he's probably not going to be in the NFL much longer past maybe a year or two. But a team who's been making a lot of moves, signing a lot of players, re-signing a lot of their own, just spending a lot of money overall in general. That is the Buffalo Bills. The Buffalo Bills have been spending a lot of money. Now, a lot of that money has been spent on re-signing their own. But what they've done this offseason, they were able to go out and they got Joey Bosa. Now, I know Joey Bosa is not the same Joey Bosa he used to be, and he's definitely had a lot of injuries and not the same player he once was. But I think he's a guy to, if you don't make him your full-time starter and you use him as a rotational pass rusher on third down situations, don't you really use him on run plays. I think he's a guy who can make an impact, and on third downs and in huge matchups and in huge moments, I think he's a guy that can really, really help out the Bills. They also brought in Michael Hyatt. Now, Michael Hyatt's another edge rusher, but he's a little bit better against the run. So I heard what the Bills might do is use Hyatt on run plays and then use Joey Bosa on pass rush plays to keep the guy fresh and keep him healthy throughout the season. They also traded Kumar Elam, who was a first-round pick a few years ago, who honestly Kaynen would turn out to be an absolute bust. I mean, when Christian Benford got hurt last season against the Chiefs, when Kumar Elam went in there, he was getting cooked, and the Chiefs were targeting him and knew that was the weakness. I mean, for a guy who's been a first rounder, he pretty much became such a liability on the Bills that they couldn't even keep him as a backup. Because what's the point of being a backup to where if your starter gets hurt, you pretty much already lost the game by that guy coming in because he's just that awful at playing the cornerback position. And the guy's got talent, but I feel like at this point it's a mental thing, and I think he just needs a change of scenery to rebuild his confidence. They were able to at least get something back for him, and they saved $2.5 million in salary cap by trading Kumar Elam. They also went on and got a deep threat in Josh Palmer from the Chargers. He's one of the best receivers at creating separation, so I think he's going to be a great addition to go along with Keon Coleman and Khalil Shakir for the Buffalo Bills. And then, like I said, they also brought in a defensive tackle from the Steelers, who's a guy who may not be as good as he once was, a little on the older side. Not a guy you can put in every down, but he's definitely a penetrator that's going to impact the offensive line. And Larry Ogunjobi is a great addition, over 305 pounds. And, the Bills were undersized at D tackle, so they finally got a 300-pounder plus, and he's going to be a guy who could definitely impact and help the Bills in run defense. They also got a corner. They brought back Dane Jackson. This is the team who probably still needs another corner, but they needed also cornerback depth. They re-signed DeMar Hamlin. They got Derek Forrest, who's a good safety when healthy, so they added to their safety depth that he needed. They cut Von Miller, who's pretty much going to be replaced by Joey Bosa. And then, like I said, Kaynen, the main thing is they re-signed Gregory Rousseau to a $20 million a year contract. They re-signed Khalil Shakir to $15 million a year. They gave Terrell Bernard $12 million a year. And then they repaid the GOAT Josh Allen over $300 million, $250 million guaranteed, which is the most by a quarterback. They're deservingly so. He'll make $55 million per year. But the main reason why they did it was they took his 4-year deal, turned it into a 6-year deal, and it lowered his cap hit for the first 2 years. So it really helps out the team. And Allen's the type of guy, too, I wouldn't be surprised in 2-3 years to do the same thing so he can continue lowering his cap hit. And the Bills also got some added compensatory picks. And with all those additions, this team is still looking at 9 to 10 draft picks to also improve their team. What are your thoughts about what the Bills are doing, Kaynen?
Yeah, with Elam, I really like getting rid of him. Like you said, he was just a liability. He was getting cooked. And for a position like cornerback, you really can't be weak because it's a lot of one-on-one stuff. So you really don't have anyone to help you unless you have a dedicated safety. So getting him out of there, I think that's good. We still need another corner, like you said, for the Bills here, and I think that's huge. I think that's the next piece they really need to focus on. D tackle pickup, that was huge. But I really like Joey Bosa. I think getting rid of Von Miller, that was a huge hit for the Bills. And I think Joey Bosa can kind of fill that gap. He's not like he once was, but having pressure on the quarterback, that really helps out the weaker secondary the Bills have. You have the quarterback, the pass rushers getting a quarterback, that's less time for them to throw, and that might be a bad read down the line that could turn into a turnover or maybe a sack. So I think that's really awesome what the Bills are doing, and especially what Josh Allen is doing. That was huge, selfless play, and I mean he's still getting paid, but that was awesome.
Yeah, and I think Joey Bosa, he's making a little bit less money than what Von Miller got, and he is younger. I mean, I think he's about like 6 years younger. And I mean, I know Joey Bosa may be going on 30. His body may be closer to 35, but I think he's still got a little bit more left in the tank than Von Miller. And I think they're going to use him the same way. You already have Gregory Rousseau. You already got AJ Espinosa. You already got Michael Hyatt. Joey Bosa is not going to have to play every down, so they're going to be able to keep him fresh, just like they kept Von Miller. And I think come playoff time, I think a fresh Joey Bosa is going to be scary. But, when we're bragging about the Patriots, we're bragging about the Bills. A team that a lot of people are scratching their head on is the 49ers. The 49ers lost a lot of, impact players in free agency. They lost their Pro Bowl level linebacker, Drew Greenlaw, who's a very impactful player when he's on the field. I mean, he's pretty much the pair with Fred Warner. I mean, those two guys are wreak havoc. And I know Fred Warner's the best in the league, but Greenlaw is a huge presence on that defense. And he's going to the Denver Broncos. Who's also going to Denver Broncos, another 49er, is Huafanga. Their Pro Bowl level safety. And I know he was hurt last year, but when he plays, I mean, you got to see when he was healthy. This team went all the way to the Super Bowl when they had guys like him and Greenlaw and Bosa all healthy. So they're losing both Greenlaw and Huafanga, a Pro Bowl level linebacker, a Pro Bowl level safety, both to the Broncos. They also lost their All-Pro corner, Shadarius Ward, to Indianapolis Colts. Now, I don't think that loss has much of an impact because Ward is kind of on the older side and he did kind of take a step back. So I think that makes sense not paying him because you probably would regret that contract later on. But they lost some offensive linemen too. They lost their starting guard, Aaron Banks. They lost their good, young, promising tackle, Jalen Moore, who was supposed to be the potential replacement for Trent Williams when he decides to go. They also decided to cut Javon Hargraves, Kyle Juszczyk, the do-it-all fullback, Leonard Floyd. And remember, Kaynen, they also traded Deebo Samuel as well. So this team's going very, very young, and they lost a lot of crucial pieces. And we're talking about a team that, is thinking Super Bowl or bust every year. So what are your thoughts, Kaynen, on all these losses and players that the 49ers lost?
Yeah, like you said, Super Bowl contender. It's really hard to see all these great players go, especially on the defensive side. They're so sound defensively. It's going to be tough to lose guys like Greenlaw and especially Hufanga, who was the difference maker. He's made so many game-changing plays. I think that's going to hurt him the most. And not having a guy who a lot of people are saying is washed as well, Deebo Samuels. I think that's going to be a big hit as well. I know they have receivers ready and willing to step up, but what he was doing for the time when he was on, he was a tremendous player. So that's going to be hard to see him go. And kind of like an unappreciated guy, Kyle Juszczyk, who did everything for them. He ran the ball, he blocked, he caught passes. You really don't see a lot of fullbacks like that anymore. So that's really tough to see as well. He was a very exciting player.
Yeah, and I wonder, why they're, making all these moves, and it probably hasn't come to do with the Brock Purdy contract. And Brock Purdy's a guy who is going to have to be paid. I think he's entering the last year of his contract, and obviously, when it comes to quarterbacks, a lot of times when there's contract negotiations that aren't going well, they usually franchise tag. So, and sometimes in certain situations, they get franchise tagged twice. So technically, they can keep Brock Purdy for 3 years, but those franchise tags aren't cheap, and especially at quarterback. And that second franchise tag is almost impossible to pay. That's why I don't see many teams doing it. But yeah, Kaynen, it seems like they're trying to maybe clear up some money for Brock Purdy. And Brock Purdy, when it comes to contract negotiations, it's really probably one of the toughest contract negotiations I've ever seen. I mean, it's a very unique situation. I mean, you got guys like Dak Prescott who makes $60 million. I mean, you guys got guys like Trevor Lawrence and Jordan Love who make 55. And, you got a guy like Brock Purdy who, has accomplished just as much, if not more than those guys. But everybody knows Brock Purdy's had this amazing system with George Kittle and Christian McCaffrey and Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel. And everybody says the same thing. They're always like, well, 15 other quarterbacks in the NFL would have the same, if not more success in that same system as Brock Purdy. So they're sitting there and saying, like, yeah, your accomplishments make you a $55 to $60 million a year quarterback. But if you didn't have that team around you, you're probably a $15 million a year quarterback, if we're being honest. But that's what makes it so tough, because when you're negotiating your contract with your agent, you got to go by what other players at your position accomplished, and that kind of basically compares your contract. Now, I know obviously, the team around them definitely helps, and I think that's why he won't get the $50-60 million. But when you look at a guy like Sam Darnold, or a guy like what Daniel Jones got after making the playoffs, or a guy like Geno Smith, I mean, Brock Purdy has every right to at least ask for $35-40 million a year. And, if they give him that, you're going to continue to see the players around them leave. And I wonder if the 49ers are going to sit there and say, hey, you're going to lose a lot of players this year. Go out there and earn your contract. Like, you say that you're worth $40-50 million a year. Well, you're going to lose Deebo Samuel and all these players. If you go out there and do it, then you are worth it. If not, then, maybe we need to look elsewhere. So what are your thoughts about the Brock Purdy contract, Kaynen?
Yeah, that's hard. I think he's going to have to do exactly what you said. I think a lot of people are going to say, go out there and earn what you say you're worth. Put your money where your mouth is, pretty much. And it's hard with Brock Purdy because, yeah, if a different quarterback was in his position, he might do good. But the matter of the fact is, Purdy excels in that system. He knows the plays, minimal mistakes. So it's kind of hard to fray away from that guy when you've had so much success. And like you said, the accomplishments pile up. So, yeah, it's really going to be determined on like this year what he does without a lot of the pieces that were around him when they were doing so good.
Yeah, and I mean, they're in a really tough division. I mean, Arizona is going to only get better. You obviously got Harrison Jr. coming in his second year with, Kyler Murray. The Rams, who just brought in Devontae Adams, they're not going anywhere. And Seattle now bringing in Sam Darnold and upgrading their quarterback position. This division is going to continue to be a gauntlet. Kaynen, I mean, do you see, obviously they still got McCaffrey, who we don't know yet. We got to see how he comes back from his injury, so we don't know what McCaffrey we're getting, but still got Kittle, you still got Ayuk. You're going to see what Juwan Jennings and Ricky Pearsall continue to do in their development with Nick Bosa on defense. I mean, how good of a team do you think this team could be, Kaynen? I mean, do you think this team is still a Super Bowl winning caliber team?
Yeah, part of me wants to say yes, but it's so hard when your best players are coming off injury and they're so injury prone. So it's really determines on them. If your best guys, McCaffrey and Bosa, can show up and stay healthy, I think for sure they're a Super Bowl team. They have so many great pieces besides them as well. I think it's just, can they step up or not and push the team to where they need to go? And yeah, Brock Purdy again, it's up to him as well. It's a lot on his shoulders this season too.
Yeah, I agree, Kaynen. It's going to come down to those two things. Can Brock Purdy get it done when it matters? And, can this team stay healthy? Because like you said, Nick Bosa's been, consistently hurt. McCaffrey's a guy who can't stay healthy. And now you got also another injury-prone guy, too, with Brandon Ayuk coming off of a serious injury. So, like you said, Kaynen, probably their three – and Trent Williams, a guy who gets hurt a lot, too. So, you got probably their four best players who can't stay healthy. And, if those guys are healthy, they can win the Super Bowl. But if, any of those guys are out, they're not a Super Bowl contending team. But we also had a lot of other free agency news. Obviously, a lot of hundreds of players are getting signed, so we can't, mention all of them. But I'm gonna try to highlight some of the, the notable ones. We obviously had Daniel Jones going to the Indianapolis Colts. This obviously, puts a lot of pressure on a guy like Anthony Richardson, who hasn't been able to develop the way they thought. I mean, a guy who's 6'4", 245, running a 4.4 with a cannon. He's one of the most talented quarterbacks this league has ever seen, but he hasn't been able to do the little things right and get the passing game down and be the mature leader that this team needs. And, they're bringing in a guy like Daniel Jones to compete with him. And, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Daniel Jones ends up being a starter sooner rather than later. But Anthony Richardson's got one chance to prove it. And, I mean, deservedly so. If you can't beat out Daniel Jones, you really shouldn't be a franchise quarterback. We had Najee Harris, like we mentioned earlier, going to the Chargers. I think that's a huge addition. You go from having, a guy like Dobbins who gets hurt a lot to a guy like Harris who never gets hurt. Josh Sweat going to the Cardinals. That was a huge pass rusher from the Eagles. They obviously couldn't re-sign him. He's going to the Cardinals. The pair back up with their head coach who coached him in Philly years ago. Jonathan Allen and Javon Hargraves, two big defensive tackles going to the Vikings. They definitely wanted to improve the interior defensive line. They definitely did so. Grady Jarrett, who got cut and then signed the same day. He's going to Chicago Bears, and he's another great defensive tackle presence. Trayshawn Wharton, the guy who plays next to Chris Jones from the Chiefs, he's leaving, and he got almost $60 million to go to the Carolina Panthers. DJ Reed, who's a solid corner who used to play opposite of Sauce Gardner, he's going to the Lions, who desperately need a corner. And with all their injuries, DJ Reed, I think, is going to have a good, success there. Javon Hargrave, one of the best safeties in the league for Miami, he's going to the New York Giants. Maybe this could make up for them losing McKinney a couple years ago. You got Cam Bynum, the great safety from the Vikings, who's going to Indianapolis Colts. They continue to try to improve their secondary. Javonte Williams, new starting running back in Dallas. He's going there to replace Rico Duetto. Rico Duetto's going to the Carolina Panthers. DeAndre Hopkins, who's going to the Baltimore Ravens. Baltimore Ravens are going to have him, Zay Flowers, and Bateman with Derrick Henry and Lamar, with Isaiah Likely and Mark Andrews. I mean, that's an embarrassment of riches, if you ask me. Dan Moore, Jr., the offensive tackle, got $82 million from the Tennessee Titans. And I know he was one of the top tackles in the market, but $82 million for Dan Moore is a lot of money. I mean, that's a guy you would pay a top 5 tackle. And I'm not sure he's really an all-pro level tackle. I mean, maybe closer to a Pro Bowl level, but I think $82 million is a lot for him. And then the last two notable offensive lineman signings was Drew Dolman, great interior offensive lineman who's going to Chicago Bears to help protect Caleb Williams, who desperately needed protection. And then the Minnesota Vikings revamped their interior offensive line, signing one of the best centers in football in Ryan Kelly. So that was notable, Kaynen. I mean, what are your thoughts on those signings, Kaynen? I mean, were there any other signings that surprised you or stuck out to you?
Yeah, so what I really liked was what the Bears did. When you get a good quarterback, great quarterback like Caleb Williams, and you bring him in on a struggling team, he gets sacked a lot, and he doesn't really perform the way he should perform because he can't stay in the pocket long enough. So what the Bears did, beefing up the offensive line, they got Joe Tooney, Jonah Jackson, Drew Dahlman, like you said. I think that's tremendous for them. That was like one of the smartest offseason moves I've ever seen, because you always hear about it. So-and-so needs help. So-and-so needs a line. And it doesn't happen a lot, and they end up trading the guy or just moving in a different direction entirely. So I think that was awesome from the Bears. It'll be good to see what they could get going there with Caleb Williams and his group, his team there. Other than that, pretty much nailed it on the head there.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought up the Bears. I know, our buddies Zan and Grant will be very happy to hear that you're thinking the Bears are going to be much improved. I mean, a team like the Bears, who obviously they have the receiver talent. You see the talent that Caleb Williams has, but he was just kind of running for his life, and it didn't seem like the offensive scheme was doing him any favors. Now you're bringing a guy like Ben Johnson, who's going to scheme receivers open so easily, and then you give Caleb Williams protection. He's not going to have to run around so much. And I really think we're going to start to see Caleb Williams flourish next season. And I mean, in a very, very tough division, I think the Bears are going to be able to finally compete. And that's something we haven't said in years. But that's going to do it for episode 4. We had a lot to break down. We obviously going to have a lot more to break down next week because we got a lot more free agency news that is going to keep coming in as each day and every day passes. But definitely make sure to be following us on all social medias. And definitely make sure to subscribe to the Empty the Bench on YouTube. And also make sure to follow us on all social medias at TFB Forecast ETB. And like I said, definitely make sure to check out our YouTube channel at youtube.com/ETB Network. We're very, very close to 1,000 subscribers. Just make sure you hit that red button. It would be very appreciated, and you definitely won't be disappointed. Something else you need to check into is our ETB Substack at etbnetwork.substack.com. We do things for baseball. We do things for basketball, MMA, college basketball, betting. If you want to get some insider information so you can win your next bets, definitely make sure to check into that. And like I said, make sure to be listening to us however you like to listen to your podcast, whether if you just throw your AirPods in and walk down the street and listen to us, or if you come home and watch it on your flat screen TV on YouTube. Definitely make sure to check us out however you can. And also, finally, the Football Forecast is presented by Playback. So definitely make sure to tune into that. And that's going to be everything for this show. He's Kaynen Buckshot. I'm Anthony Balester, and we'll see you later.